Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Well, Elon Musk is now the richest person on the planet.
More than half the satellites in space are owned and controlled by one man.
Starting his own artificial intelligence company.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate.
He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
There is a reason the U.S. government is so reliant on him.
Elon Musk is a scam artist, and he's done nothing.
Anything he does is fascinating to people.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. I'm your host, Max Chafkin, and as promised, we're back to you a second time this week with a very special episode. We talk all the time on this podcast about the ways that Elon Musk runs his companies differently from what you might think of as a normal business. It's not just that he works crazy hours. It's not just that he makes outrageous demands on his employees or carries his toddler around like a good luck charm. It's also reflected in the actual setup of these companies, the way that people who work for Elon relate to one another. What it is everybody reports to Elon. Ultimately, he is the sun and everybody around him revolves around him. And this has all kinds of implications for all of his companies, none of which are normal. And happily, Bloomberg just published an infographic that kind of explains all of this. It's a beautiful piece of reporting and visualization that lays out the weird relationships that surround the thing that we have been calling Elon Inc., the universe of Elon Musk's companies. And, happily for us, two of the reporters who put this together, the two lead reporters to put this together, are regulars on this very podcast. Dana Hull, Bloomberg's Elon Musk correspondent, is joining us to discuss it. Hello, Dana.
Hey.
And Kurt Wagner, our social media reporter and regular on this show. Kurt, welcome to Elon Inc.
I wouldn't miss it. Thank you.
And because this is a very special episode, we have a very special guest. Katie Notopoulos, who covers tech and culture for Business Insider, is here. Katie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I like to think of myself as the cat turd, too, of Threads.
So, Dana, let's start with you. Just tell us about what this graphic is trying to accomplish. And for people who haven't looked at it, you really should pause a podcast and look at it because it's an amazing sort of picture, amazing visualization. It's constructed around a solar system. Why a solar system, Dana?
Yeah, so the idea for this was people are always asking, how can Elon Musk run 6 companies simultaneously? Who else works for him? Is there a way that we could do a visual representation of the org chart at all of his companies? And I think instead of thinking of it as a linear org chart, like the people who run X or X.AI or SpaceX or Tesla, you really do have to think of it as a solar system with Elon as the very bright burning sun, and then this constellation of companies around him that are kind of circling him. And then around the companies, you've got space junk, you've got satellites, you've got meteors, you've got certain people that kind of bop around between the planets. And so that was kind of our visual framework, and I think it worked out really well. Anyone who's covered Elon for a long period of time knows that there are certain characters who just emerge over and over and over again. And while some of these names might be familiar to listeners, others are not, and you should really get to know who they are.
Kurt, how did you report through this? It's not like you can just look this stuff up on the internet, not like a normal company. How does a reporter or even someone who works for Elon Musk figure out who matters at a given company or within this universe?
It's a challenge because, as you point out, they don't just simply say, here's the executive team on a lot of these websites, certainly not with X, which is what I cover most closely. So, it really comes down to shoe leather reporting, right? Trying to talk to people who are inside these companies, trying to figure out, hey, when a finance decision is being made, where does that go to? Who is sort of the final, approver of that? Or also just following Elon's posts sometimes, he'll either post a photo or video and you'll see people lingering in the background and be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that person was involved in that thing or company, right? And so it's really just good old fashioned reporting. And I think the challenge is people move around. Often, as we get through this discussion, you'll see like Tesla executives who are now over at X, or SpaceX folks who are now at Boring Company, or whatever it may be. And so just sort of keeping up to speed with like the who's there at that moment can be really tough. But generally, we have a pretty good idea of, as Dana mentioned, who's orbiting Elon at any given time.
Did you two have this like in your head already before you worked on this project? And was it a solar system or a different metaphor?
I can speak for covering Tesla. I've always kept an org chart because it changes so quickly. And, what I think is wild about Tesla, if you look at their website, there's nothing about people. It's all about the products. It's all about the cars or the robot or the promise of autonomy or the mega packs. Like, there is nothing about people on that website at all. And Tesla has over 120,000 employees globally, and they just have 3 named executive officers. So just figuring out the delta, like, okay, like besides the 3 named people on securities filings, who else is actually like running the show is just this constant challenge. And, I think any reporter who covers the company always kind of has the org chart in mind. A lot of it is like asking our sources that are still at the company, like, has the org chart changed? Like, what are you seeing? Like, I heard this executive left. Are they gone? Are they back? Like, are they on a leave of absence? Like, it's always very, very fluid. And I think that, like a solar system speaks to that.
These names, like, I'm guessing you're not covering Elon Musk day to day, so you don't know them all. But I'm guessing many of them are familiar to you because, like, Kurt kind of hinted at this. A lot of this stuff is like playing out on social media. Like, some of these relationships we know about because they're tweeting at one another.
Yeah, exactly. You can see it play out. And there's also a little bit of an element of like some of these figures have sort of moved from one phase of his life or one company to another. They sort of are intertwined. It's not just he has a bunch of companies and these are the people that work at them. Like, there's sort of these satellite floaters coming in. It's almost like sort of keeping track of who's dating who on Vanderpump Rules.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask you, like, does his sort of universe of influence look like a celebrity's, universe of influence, or does it look different? Or I'm just kind of curious how you think about the Elon community compared to other similar communities of influence or whatever.
So I think kind of the best real window into this that we ever had was that moment during the Chancery Court lawsuit when he was trying to get out of buying Twitter, where all of a sudden all his text messages were revealed. And you got to kind of see how he interacts with these other people that he either works with or has a friendship with or a quasi-business relationship with, and how much, like, they suck up to him. And like, there's such a weird power imbalance and dynamic. It's not exactly like a boss. It's not exactly like a friend. There's a really weird, like, sycophantic thing going on. And that kind of feels like, what you might imagine from like Entourage or something, where like someone has these kind of yes men and these hangers on.
That list of text messages, as Kurt also knows, it's like the Rosetta Stone of like, if you want to understand Elon, it contains like everything you need to know, I think. Kurt, I'm curious if you ever get questions from like Twitter employees asking like how to get in touch with various people in Elon's orbit. Like, do people who work for him understand this empire?
I don't think so. Certainly not off the top of their heads. I think like at a certain level of closeness to Elon, you probably obviously like the higher up the food chain you are, the more exposure you have to this kind of thing. But I think like the everyday rank and file sort of employees, certainly at X, I don't think they're necessarily aware of the, broad orbit here. And part of that is because like, I can tell you it was a little bit hard to put together on our end, right? Like it required, like I said, like real reporting, real phone calls, real going out and asking people. Certainly with the X side, I remember talking to folks like, all right, well, like who's in charge of product? And they were sort of like, well, it's not like entirely clear, but we think it's this person, but like sometimes decisions are made over here. And so my point being is that it's not a very transparent system. And I think some of that is by design. I think some of that is just what happens when you have 6 different companies plus all of the extra, entourage that Elon comes with on any given day. It's just like, this is not a normal thing. And even other billionaires, like I was thinking, okay, Mark Zuckerberg is another person I cover very closely. Obviously has a huge, group of advisors, people who are close to him. Like if we were to do this with him, it would be much easier in part because he's just running one company. He's running one business. Like the 6 businesses thing is really what makes this, I think, such a unique scenario and also makes it hard to kind of understand the org chart from the ground floor.
Yeah, just jumping on that, are there legal or ethical questions raised by the weirdness here? I mean, the fact that you potentially have say like Tesla's a public company, you potentially have a Tesla employee being dragged off into some other part of Elon's empire or being asked to work on maybe even a personal project for him or something like that. Is that something that creates pitfalls, legal pitfalls, ethical pitfalls, that sort of thing?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a big part of the whole like fight over Musk's 2018 compensation package, right? Like you have shareholders and, smaller investors, a lot of pension funds being like, this is a part-time CEO. He has never paid full attention to our company. And if anything, like he's just doing more and more crazy things and starting newer and newer companies and like borrowing Peter to pay Paul and like using Tesla resources to help prop up his other companies. I mean, now Tesla is advertising on X. And, I think a thing to remember is that Tesla is the only public company out of the 6. The other 5 are all privately held. And so Tesla has to disclose in its proxy all of the ways in which these companies relate. Like they share the corporate jet, like they share security. And so just the whole fact that Tesla resources are used for other parts of the empire is a big concern. The question is like, will anyone ever do anything about it? So far, the board certainly hasn't.
All right, let's move on. The Elon universe, as we're explaining, it's a very complex cosmos, very hard for somebody who isn't studying this closely to understand, that's a big problem because Elon's an important guy with a lot of money. So to make sense of this, to get some more insight into this world, we're going to use one of the great tools of American journalism, the senior superlative list. Now, for those of you who have not gone to an American high school or have not watched a movie involving one or just forgot what it's like, basically, at the end of the year, a committee of students puts together a yearbook, which is a book with 2 covers on either side that has all the names of the students. And there's usually a several-page, full-color section in which the students vote on who has the best hair, the best smile, and so on. And so for this panel, we're all going to pretend to be editors of a high school yearbook, and we're going to choose the superlatives for the members of the Elon universe. Now, ahead of this show, just tell everyone, I asked everyone to send me their senior superlatives for the for the Elon Musk universe. I've collected them here, and I will moderate this discussion and try to rein everybody in. And before we do that, I need to ask, was anybody on this panel a senior superlative? And if so, what was your superlative? Katie.
I was, and I actually had 2. I was class clown and most fun-filled.
Wow.
I was just the editor of the yearbook, so I didn't get a superlative, but I put the yearbook together.
Well, Dan, that's great. I mean, I'm so happy that you are here with us to keep me honest. Kurt?
Yeah, this is sort of embarrassing, but, why not? I got first place and third place in the cutest couple competition. I got first place with my actual girlfriend, and I got third place with my best friend, who I spent a lot of time hanging out with. And we played football together, and apparently everyone thought we, made a nice couple as well. So
wow.
I was taking home multiple prizes, which is pretty impressive.
Wow.
Yeah.
So mine was I think it was best all around, which sounds like a really good category, but I actually think it's like a maybe bit of a burn, and I just because it's you don't have anything to offer. So anyway, we're gonna start with kind of a classic, maybe not as classic as Class Clown, but a classic senior superlative category, life of the party. Katie Notopoulos, who is the life of the party in Elon Musk's universe?
My vote is for his brother, Kimball Musk, and for a very straightforward reason, which is that he's a chef. And, I'm sure he throws a great party. He can actually cook.
I mean, I completely agree with that.
He also seems like he's a guy who loves to party.
He likes to party. Dana, Kurt, what do we make of Kimball? How do you rate him on the life of the party scale? And who was your life of the party?
I think that's a fun pick. I think my life of the party choice was Elon himself, which was, to be clear, the only time I picked Elon, because I know we're mostly talking about his crew here. It seems like Elon, is maybe dabbling in some extracurriculars. And I think Kimball and Elon seem like, 2 brothers who tend to maybe get in trouble together from time to time. And as far as long-term consequences go, I'm not sure that's best. But for one night, life of the party, sure. Why not?
Dan, I know falls under the normal description of your job, but who was your life of the party?
Alex Spiro, Elon's lawyer. I mean, like fast-talking New Yorker. I don't know, I think he lives in Miami now, but he's at all of these big trials, right? He defended Elon during the pedo guy trial. He, is just front and center. He's always filing these crazy motions late on a Friday night. I get these Pacer alerts, and there's an Alex Spiro motion. And if you're a guy like Elon Musk and you're involved in a lot of litigation and you want to have a hardcore litigation team, you kind of need a fun lawyer.
These are all good choices, but this is Grimes' erasure, everybody. I think we all know. Okay, wow, we did it. Okay, let me compose myself. Everyone knows that Grimes is the life of the party as well. All right, best dressed. Dana, you had Franz von Holzhausen, who sounds like a well-dressed guy, but remind us who he is and kind of why you put him.
Yeah, so Franz is Tesla's chief designer. He lives in L.A. I actually saw him in person recently. I flew down to the Peterson Automotive Museum in L.A., and it was just such a wild scene. It was a Sunday morning. They were having this EV event at the museum on the roof, and Franz rolled up in his Cybertruck and emerged from the Cybertruck wearing a black T-shirt and jeans and some kind of high-end, high-top basketball shoes, and he had on aviator sunglasses, and he was just mobbed by people wanting his autograph. And it was kind of a good reminder that Elon obviously has tons of fans, but other people within his orbit are sort of celebrities in their own right, and Franz is definitely this way.
So we had some other good picks here. Katie had Linda Yaccarino, who I want to save for our next category. Kurt had Mae Musk, Elon Musk's mom, who's a professional model, professionally well-dressed. All right, this is I think my favorite category, school spirit. Kurt, most school spirit, who is your pick?
I picked ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino as the most school spirit. I think you see, her out there pumping up Elon. I think you see her out there pumping up X, seemingly totally behind him and everything that he says and tweets. She just seems like his big cheerleader, right? And if we're at the school of Elon, I just get the sense that Linda is really bought in. It's interesting because he makes her job so hard. He tweets things, he says things that make selling X's business so hard, and yet there she is rooting him on at every step. And so I had to give this to her.
We have a little tape of this. Let's give it a listen.
X, we need to keep our minds open that it's developing into this global town square that is fueled by free expression, where the public gathers in real time.
Linda, she's leading the fencing team pep rally. She's there cheering on the math team. She is all about X. And I have to think that's a self-preservation tactic, but it does make me wonder, if this is a guide to how you, if you report up to Elon Musk, I guess this is what you have to do.
I think that the key to surviving at Musk's companies, if you're up high, is you either have incredibly deft emotional intelligence and you know how to manage him with the right level of sycophancy and obedience, or you somehow dodge him and you stay out of his line of fire, which is not always easy.
I mean, I think I had originally thought maybe someone else, but I'm completely swayed by Kurt here. I'm voting Linda too. And I think that what really embodies the school spirit, the sort of the person who's these are the best days of our lives. Remember this, so exciting. You have to sign my yearbook. That's the school spirit. I think that there was this moment when she sort of first took over at X of did she know what she was getting into? Did she take this because she thought it was just going to be a fun job and now it's a nightmare? Does she regret this? And there were sort of reports that she was getting texts and phone calls from people she had worked with back at NBC being get out now before you ruin your reputation. And then there was sort of more reporting that came out that's no, she really is just a true believer. She absolutely believes it. She's in, full send. She's in.
These are the best years of our lives.
Yeah.
All right. Class clown, Katie Natopoulos. Class clown of her senior class. Who is the class clown of Elon's senior class?
So I vote Grimes, and hear me out. She is one of the few people in his orbit who, like, she's not a business person, right? I mean, she does have some business interests or whatnot, but, like, she does have the freedom to kind of say really wild, weird stuff. And I get the sense that she secretly, like, does have a good sense of humor. Like, she also is the voice of a children's AI stuffed animal toy called Grok.
Oh, we talk about Grok all the time on this podcast.
I own a Grok.
You gotta bring it next time.
Yeah, my kids love Grok, but I've spent a lot of time with Grok, and I feel like her spirit in that is humorous to me in a way that I don't necessarily find some of his other business associates to be humorous. And unfortunately, I know that Elon himself, I think, would love to be the class clown, but I'm like, sorry, buddy.
What is it about Elon's humor?
It's just sweaty, right? Like, he misses the mark. It's like he thinks he's so funny, but it's kind of just like warmed over ifunny.com. He steals memes is a bone in the throat of a lot of people that just can't. Like, it's just annoying that he does that, and it's not funny. Like, and it's kind of rude.
Dana, I mean, you and I, of course, have talked many times about Elon's humor. And have you noticed any changes in the humor? Like, he's more on Twitter now. What for you sticks out about Elon's humor?
I mean, others have said this before, but he's really like a comedian kind of trying out his bits. And like, if you listen to him long enough, which, you know, for better or worse, those of us on this podcast do listen to him quite a lot. Like, he just recycles a lot of the same things, like, over and over again. It's almost like he's so sleep deprived and he's running on empty so much that, like, he forgets what he's saying is what he said before.
I've sort of described his humor as like middle school humor before, right? Like, it feels like the kind of thing that, you know, there's like a lot of kind of weird sex jokes and then a lot of weird, you know, like jokes about females and their bodies and things. And it's like, it feels like the kind of thing that, you know, a 14-year-old boy would do to try and like impress his friends type of thing. And it feels like he doesn't really deviate a ton from that.
All right. So I know Kurt is the cutest couple in this room, but I'm going to ask Katie for her cutest couple because it was a good one. Katie, cutest couple in Elon land.
It's got to be David Sachs and Jason Calacanis. They do the podcast together.
Yeah, these are the co-hosts of the
All In podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, and I like watching them. They sometimes will disagree and have little spats with each other on Twitter, which I find charming. I mean, I guess I should say I find not that much about them charming, but, you know, together, they're clearly, they've got a thing going on. They've got chemistry. You can't deny that.
Well, and they are both going to come up individually later on. So let's just keep moving. But I totally agree. They have a wonderful banter. I was a little disappointed, I have to say. Kurt had Elon and May, you know, Elon and his mom, which to me feels like a cop-out choice a little bit.
Well, they showed up at the Met Gala together. Was that not cute or what? To, you know, bring your mom to the Met Gala?
Next category we have is most likely to succeed. Dana Hall, who is your most likely to succeed in Elon land?
Well, this was an easy one for me. Gwen Shotwell. I mean, come on. The woman has been the number 2 at SpaceX for all these years. She clearly knows how to manage Elon. She's a survivor. She's incredibly respected. She handles all the contracts with NASA and the Pentagon. If Elon is like the bad dad or the scary dad at the office, Gwen is like the good mom. And she clearly has his trust. And I mean, Max, you and I got to interview her at the SpaceX headquarters in LA, several years ago. And, you know, for all of the talk about how Elon, there's like sort of turnover in the executive ranks at Elon's companies. I mean, Gwen, there's no turnover there. I mean, she has been at SpaceX since the beginning. She was like the 7th employee. And I think she's clearly the most successful.
You know, this came up in the teacher's pet category. I do think a large portion of most likely to succeed in Elon land is being willing to essentially defend anything he does. Actually, we have some audio right here of Gwen Shotwell talking to Forbes Women.
I also have learned that he's rarely wrong. Even if that's super irritating and it feels not right when you first hear what he wants to go achieve. And so if it doesn't sound like what you think we should be doing, I always stop and think, okay, we've been through this before. Think hard about what he's saying, what he's trying to achieve, and figure out how to make it work.
It's very inspirational music in the background. I love that. It feels like I'm watching like a 90s infomercial.
All right. Now, this category, so most likely to succeed, that's always kind of like a 50-50 or, in some ways that's a compliment. In some ways, we're all on the yearbook committee sort of making fun of you. The next few categories sort of get into, I'd say, less flattering categories. Teacher's pet. Katie, who is your teacher's pet?
I mean, it's got to be Jason, right?
That is the correct answer. Let's listen for ourselves. Here's Jason Calacanis talking with Lex Friedman.
I have never seen an entrepreneur suffer more than him. And, he's been public about that. Like, you do not want to be me. He has suffered for those companies. He has suffered to get them where they are. It has not been easy.
You see that he has this close friendship that has gone on for a long time, but really, really where those tweets that were revealed in the Delaware courts during the X takeover, where he's saying wild stuff.
I would jump on a ground for you. Grande.
Yeah. He would say, wasn't he like, you have my sword? Like really dramatic, like sycophantic things, like. And of course, also, like, my dream would be to be Twitter CEO, like, also an ask. But, like, it was just really, like, he's laying it on thick.
Okay, I can't help it. I have to play another clip from the Friedman interview. This one's kind of a personal interest. Off mic, a lot of us will talk about who are our favorite journalists. And right here, we have Jason Calacanis talking about his favorite journalist.
People were kind of aghast that he was asking Vlad such good questions. Yeah. And they're like, oh, my God, Elon's the best journalist on the planet. And it was like,
that's what he does.
Anybody who knows Elon knows he asks great questions. I mean, I used to.
Oh, wow.
Katie, you're only criticizing Jason Calacanis because you're worried Elon Musk is coming for your job.
I heard that clip. That's great.
Okay. Now, for most likely to be president, we have Kurt had Jason's co-host as your pick, David Sachs. Why, Kurt?
I did. He just seemed, of everyone in the universe, he seems the most interested in politics and, like, having an influence over geopolitical stuff. I don't know. It's like he seems to want to be involved in all this stuff. He talks about Russia and Ukraine all the time. He talks about like other geopolitical issues on the All In Pod, but also on his Twitter account. And I was just like, I was looking through the list of all these people, and he seems the most in tune with what's going on. At least like he likes to talk about what's going on in the world. And I thought if anyone wants to be president, it's got to be this guy.
He's hosting a big fundraiser for Trump. He and his wife are hosting with someone. So he is very interested in politics.
With another all-in co-host we have not mentioned, Chamath Palihapitiya. I think it's like a $500,000 a plate dinner.
That might be a little above my budget.
To be clear, Elon Musk has not endorsed anyone, and he claims that he is not giving money to any candidates, but he has left open the possibility of donating money via a PAC. And he obviously, I mean, he is not a big fan of President Joe Biden. I mean, he's made that abundantly clear.
Yeah, and also possibility that he saunters into this fundraiser in early June with May Musk in tow or somebody else. Okay, last of these categories. And I will say that Katie and I were the only ones brave enough to answer this question. For biggest flirt, Katie, you had Alex Spiro, who was was Dana's life of the party. Actually, you know what? I'd like Dana to defend that. Why would Alex Spiro be the biggest flirt in Elon land?
Oh, well, because if you're doing a jury trial, you've got to be able to basically flirt with the jury to win, right? So I could see that, you've got to have a sort of amount of like confidence and bravado and a real rapport with everyday people to kind of sway them to your side. I could definitely see that.
Is that line up for you?
I think so. And I mean, he's also someone he's unlike some of the people who work for Elon Musk, where Elon Musk is their sole boss. Like, he has other clients. He's bipping and bopping around with lots of people. Elon is just one of many of his clients,
All right. So for our final segment, I've asked everyone to come up with their own category that wasn't on this list and a nominee. So Katie, why don't you go first? What was your imaginary category.
Okay, so mine was one that we did have in my high school, which was most likely to stay past 12th grade, which again is a little bit of an insult, I think.
I'd say a little bit.
I think it's a mix of you either love the school so much that like you kind of like school spirit, or like, buddy, I don't think you're going to make it, but you can graduate. But I had Franz von Holzhausen. And the reason is because he has been there a long time. And I can sort of see him being a lifer and holding on.
Like Matthew McConaughey and, in whatever movie that is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Kurt, what was your category?
I had most likely to move your family to the surface of Mars. And for that, I had Steve Davis, the president of the Boring Company, because you may recall, shortly after Elon took over X, Steve moved his family into X's office and literally lived in a conference room with his partner and their, I believe, newborn child while they were transitioning from Twitter to X. And I just thought if anybody's willing to move their family into a, office cubicle, then they're probably willing to follow Elon to the surface of Mars. So Steve Davis wins that one.
Steve Davis is like a really interesting and sort of important person in Elon land who's been really close to him. Is probably another candidate, frankly, for stay past 12th grade. Worked with him very closely at SpaceX, was involved at Twitter, Boring Company. I actually had him as my class clown because there was a time, I think he closed it, but for a while he owned a frozen yogurt shop in Washington, D.C. called Mr. Yogato for some reason, in addition to all this other stuff he was doing. So he's an interesting person. My category was, which I think we may have had in my yearbook, was worst case of senioritis. This is someone who is not putting in all the effort, maybe not involved enough. And I picked Peter Thiel because we think of him as being a really important power broker. But if you look at this graphic, he's just kind of like a little piece of space garbage off to the far right corner. And it's a little bit surprising because, of course, Elon Musk has really moved to Peter Thiel's worldview. He's sort of in almost every way they've come together, and he's managed to somehow maybe lose some of the luster. Maybe Elon's taken some of his thunder. Dana, I'm going to give you the last category. What was it?
Well, of course, my category was most dramatic.
All right, let's listen to some tape that helps explain or maybe predicts the answer.
Look, I know I sometimes say or post strange things, but that's just how my brain works. To anyone I've offended, I just want to say I reinvented electric cars and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude?
Dana, could it have been any other way?
It really couldn't have been, but I actually thought you were going to play the clip from when he spoke at DealBook and told Bob Iger and all the advertisers who were boycotting X to go F themselves. I mean, this is not a subtle person. And, this is a guy who, he's laid off or fired, thousands of people at Tesla over the last month. In one case, he basically disbanded an entire team and then started quietly hiring some people back. He doesn't do anything subtle. And even his, emails to his employees are you've got to be totally hardcore, work all weekend. There's nothing. I mean, everything is always dramatic with him.
Katie, when do you think this, Elon as this, figure of cultural fascination, when did it begin? When did it start to really feel in your world, that he was somebody who mattered just, beyond the companies? And, what caused it?
So that's a good question. I feel for a while I sort of was, as someone who's not primarily interested in cars or space, or I mean, I guess I'm interested in them existing, but in my coverage or whatnot, I wasn't that excited by him. But then I want to say actually, we just played a clip from when he was on Saturday Night Live, and I feel that sort of was right at a moment where something was turning with him, where he was going from a guy who is a famous businessman to someone who kind of exists in pop culture in a much, much bigger and fascinating and weird way. And I also think that the moment where he showed up on the Met Gala with Grimes was sort of the dam breaking of this is just fun. This is now you are a pop culture figure.
Once he once he became the richest person in the world, and once he bought a website that is all about influencing culture and shaping the news and the facts that people get, like, to me, that obviously he was a well-known, of course, and very prominent person before that. But I feel like, to me, that was more the tipping point. It was like, suddenly he wasn't just this famous tech guy. He was now the famous tech guy who owns the distribution channel for what has created like a lot of really important internet moments, right? Which was Twitter. So to me, like, that purchase was what sort of, it's now been 2 years or whatever. I think that purchase is sort of what pushed him into this, like, okay, we're not just looking at him as the cool Iron Man guy. We're now looking at him in a very different light because of the power that he has over speech in the world.
Yeah, I think that peak Elon may have been when he hosted Saturday Night Live. And then now it's like he's kind of on the downward slope in that once you become so powerful, then you have a target on your back, and like the backlash is very real. People used to hold him in very high esteem. There's now like a real Elon backlash. You're seeing like bumper stickers on Teslas in the Bay Area that say things like, I bought my car before I knew Elon was crazy. You have people actively saying that they're voting no at the Tesla shareholder meeting. I don't know if he inspires the same kind of like, feeling that he used to when he was just like this guy trying to solve the problem of climate change.
Yeah, and I mean, that is, I think, ultimately like why this discussion matters, because as funny as it is to like, talk about who's the like biggest flirt in Elon land, it's also, these are the people that are causing this incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful person to do the things that he does. I mean, they could even, David Sachs could be president, y'all. So that's why we're doing this. And I'm sure we will revisit these topics again and again in the weeks to come. Yeah. Thank you, Katie Natopoulos.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kurt, Dana, thanks for being on the podcast as always.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Naomi Shavin and Rehan Armancia are senior editors. The idea for this very show also came from Rehan. Blake Maples handles engineering, and we get special editing assistance from Jeff Grocott and Antonia Mufarich. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Seguiera. Brendan Francis Noonan is our executive producer, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. I'm Max Chafkin. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us, and we will see you next week.